What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mick Thinks Tiny. My name is Mick. There's a new tiny house community being developed right now in the state of Colorado, and it's the first of its kind for the state because it's being designed specifically for teachers. So today I'm going to talk about what makes this particular tiny house community unique, and I'm going to talk about whether or not this particular model would be a good fit for you. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and let's jump into it. Let's talk about this new tiny house community in Colorado. All right, welcome back to the channel. So today I'm talking about a new tiny house community that's being developed for teachers specifically in Colorado. There's a couple reasons why I wanted to talk about this particular tiny house community that's being developed. So I came across this article that really stood out to me. It said tiny home village built to help recruit and house teachers. I haven't really seen a headline like this related to the tiny house industry. Typically you see tiny house communities being built in general for people just to live in year-round, or you see things related to veterans or people who are experiencing homelessness. So the fact that they're focusing on teachers is what initially sort of made it stand out for me. So this particular community is called Wendy's Village. It's located in Colorado Springs, Colorado. It's going to be on the campus of a K-8 school, so an elementary/middle school. It's a 40-unit development that's already been approved by the state of Colorado, so this is underway. It's going to have 40 tiny homes. Each tiny home is going to be about 350 square feet. It's going to cost $825 a month for the teachers to live there, and it's going to have community spaces and amenities just like any other tiny house community would. So the focus is on having gathering spaces and developing community with the teachers while also giving them a more affordable place to live. It's a partnership with We Fortify, which is a nonprofit that focuses on land development. They've built other villages and they have other villages in the works as well too. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I wanted to focus on why they're creating the village and also how this particular village could change things for the tiny house industry, because I think it could. Why create the village? There's two reasons why this village is important to this particular area in Colorado Springs. The main thing is housing prices and teacher salaries. So there's a gap between the two that they're trying to address. So when we're looking at Colorado Springs, on the plus side, we already know that Colorado is a great place to go tiny. If you remember from my video a few weeks ago, Texas is the #1 state to go tiny in the United States, but Colorado is #2. And there's a couple reasons for that. They're #1 in terms of how many communities there are. There's 20. They're also #1 when it comes to how many builders there are. There's 21 in the state. But not every area in Colorado, not every county is as tiny house friendly as some of the counties and cities in Texas. So that's why it's #2. Colorado Springs is pretty expensive. So Colorado Springs is $83,000 a year for median family income, which is a little bit higher than the $80K for the US as a whole. The median home price sits at about $461,000 a year, which is $50K over median home price in the United States. And the average rental price sits at around $1,900 a month. And the average rental price in the United States as a whole sits around $1,600. So there's a gap for sure because it's more expensive to live in this area, even though it's an attractive place to live because you have access to hiking, you have national parks, you've got beautiful landscapes, you're not too far from the south, you're not too many hours of a flight away from the southwestern part of the United States or even the West Coast. Now, when we're looking at teachers in particular, I just wanted to know personally, what is the gap? So how much are teachers actually making in this area compared to nationally, and how is that causing a problem for this particular area, this particular school district? So looking up teacher data, the National Education Association, you can actually look up how much teachers make on average in any state in the US. And I found that Colorado's kind of at the bottom of that list. So Colorado pays their teachers an average starting salary of about $42,000 a year compared to about $68,000 a year for the entire country. So there is definitely a gap there, with Colorado being closer to the bottom. How this breaks down in terms of their teachers, like sort of day-to-day life or what their cost of living looks like, is that if they're making $42,421 a year, their take-home pay after taxes sits at around $2,900 a month. And if they're going to move into the average apartment in the area, then they're looking at spending about $1,900 a month, which isn't really realistic. That's about 66% of their income. So and that leaves them with only like $1,000 for the rest of the month. So the issue that this particular area is having is trying to retain teachers. And that makes sense. If you're spending about 70% of your income every month, it's going to be hard to convince you to stay in a particular job. So the pros of Wendy's Village is that it addresses the teacher retention issue. You're most likely going to have less people quitting if you can lower their cost of living. They're trying to focus on new teachers, I'm assuming because they assume that they would be younger and have less expenses. They're also, in a way, helping build up their community because they're creating a stronger sense of community between the teachers themselves because they are basically living where they work. It'll contribute more to the local economy because they won't be commuting too far away and spending their money somewhere else. So they'll be spending money in that particular area where they live. And it addresses the housing issue. Now, I think that this is important to talk about because I believe personally that it has some potential implications and consequences long-term for the tiny house industry. So the cost of living is not going to go down in the United States. I've read a lot of your comments. I know a lot of you are frustrated about the overall cost of living in the US and how that's affecting tiny homes, right? So some of you are noticing like tiny house prices are going up. Now, this is a potential solution to housing, but only for one particular group in one particular area. And it also causes other problems because I don't know how many people want to live literally on the campus where they work, right? So it gets rid of some of that freedom of choice in terms of where you choose to live, which can be an exciting thing for someone when they get a new job. So that's just my thought on that. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Make sure you drop comments. Would you want to live on the campus where you're working? Maybe some people don't mind it. The last thing about it that I feel like matters a lot for this particular industry is what are tiny house villages for? So what's the purpose of a tiny house community? I know a lot of you are dropping comments about how you wish that there was a tiny house community in your area. You wish that there was a tiny house community that was more affordable. But as more communities, at least from a government standpoint, as more cities and governments choose to make tiny house villages for homeless communities, for veterans, and now we've got one for teachers, my concern is that tiny houses will be used more as a way to try to solve these larger societal issues that we have, which really can't be solved with a tiny house village. Now, a tiny house village, it's a great short-term solution, but as I mentioned in a video, I talked about are tiny homes a solution to affordable housing? Not really. So this village might be helpful, in the short term for this one particular group of teachers in this district. But in the long term, I think it could create more problems because now we'll start to see just tiny home communities for people that work certain jobs or are struggling with certain things, as opposed to the original intention, which was to create more sustainable, community-oriented places that people choose to live in, like not because they don't have a choice. Because there's no other housing option. So let me know what you think. I know this is a little bit of a rant on this particular issue, but I think it's important to bring these things up, and I'm going to continue to talk about different things as I see like different headlines popping up, because I think it's important to discuss where this industry is going, because it does affect things for all of you. It affects the prices of the tiny homes. It affects the availability of communities. It affects how much it costs to live in a tiny house community. All of these things are sort of connected. So I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you think. If you haven't seen my other videos on tiny house communities around like sustainability or the purpose of the communities or the future of them, you can check those out here. And don't forget to think tiny. I'll see you guys in the next one.